Hello, crackpots and cartoonists. My name is TB Skyen, and a couple of days ago, unbeknownst to, well, probably to lots of people because there's other stuff going on right now, but certainly unbeknownst to me, Marvel unveiled a new group of superheroes called the New Warriors, or technically they're called the New Warriors, but they're a follow-up to the 90s series, the New Warriors, who now are going to be the old Warriors in this one, but then they've got a new team of new Warriors who are going to... It's a whole thing. Anyway, Marvel Comics and comic lore in general is weird. But basically, they've got a bunch of new superheroes, which is lovely, because that's part of the strategy that Marvel has been running for a while now, that they use their comic books as a place to experiment with new characters, new ideas, new origin stories, new versions of old beloved characters, in expectation that eventually at some point they can adapt those characters into the much more profitable medium of TV and movies. And that's sort of been Marvel's kind of business model for a bit now, because at this point, the comic book business just doesn't make them like most of their money anymore, so it's become kind of a vestigial part of Marvel Comics to have a comic book business where they then experiment with things that can eventually be adapted into their real business at this point, which is making movies and TV shows and tie-ins and merchandise and God knows what else. So it happens sometimes that when an old, venerable publisher unveils something new, there's a fan backlash because, oh my god, they're changing a thing that I knew and I loved. And that's, normal, that's fine. Sometimes fans get attached to things. Generally speaking, that's not too toxic. But the backlash to the New Warriors here has been unusually toxic. So I thought, let's go and have a look at them and see why people might be having a negative reaction to them. Fortunately, they've been posting the cover and a lineup of the old New Warriors. These are the New Warriors who were the New Warriors before the New Warriors are going to be the New Warriors. And also, character sheets for all the new characters. Isn't that lovely? Let's have a look at the first one. Screen time. Okay. Well, looking at the character design, he looks like he's got a cybernetic visor and a thing on his brain, which tells me he's got some kind of psychic connection power, tech magic, technomancer kind of thing. He's wearing... I'm not really sure what this is. It doesn't look like streetwear, but it also doesn't look like a cyber suit. It's sort of... It looks like what comic book artists thought that kids these days are wearing, in the 90s? But it's got, a Wi-Fi symbol on the chest, and he's so he's some kind of tech hero, I guess. Let's have a look at his backstory. He's a meme-obsessed super teen whose brain became connected to the internet... Okay, he's a meme-obsessed super teen whose brain became connected to the internet after becoming exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas. Okay, I believe I'm beginning to see the problem here. Now he can see augmented reality and real-time maps and can instantly Google any fact. Does this make him effectively a genius? He sure acts like it does. Okay. Alright. I've wanted to have teen characters who felt as, air quotes, now, as the New Warriors did in 1990, explains Cebulski. He's the writer on this thing. The New Warriors have been the zeitgeist characters from the beginning. You get edgy skateboarding Night Thrasher in the 90s and the reality TV team in the 2000s. And now in 2020, we have the New Warriors who have never grown up without the internet and one character who appears to essentially live inside it. The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense, and because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So with screen time, we liked the idea that he has infinite screen time. Okay, so to be fair, any superhero backstory sounds completely stupid and ridiculous when you just kind of spell it out. Like, Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider and now he can climb on walls. Yeah, that makes sense. And Superman was sent from the planet Krypton in a spaceship, and then he becomes super powerful because of the Earth's yellow sun. It all sounds silly when you spell it out. But experimental internet gas is a phrase that raises a lot of questions, and I can't imagine any answers to that that are very good. What the hell is experimental? What? Did he aerosolize the His brain became connected to the internet after becoming exposed to experimental internet gas. So it put a Wi-Fi connect? What? He can... Okay, leave that aside. Fine. Let's just say that's the backstory. It's not more ridiculous than a radioactive spider, surely. But now he can see augmented reality and real-time maps and can instantly Google any fact. See, okay. Now, I'm 30 at this point. 31, actually. So I'm not, like, one of the young ones anymore, and I can't say that I fully understand what's happening on TikTok these days or anything, but I do know that kids who are extremely online don't Google facts or look at real-time map. Like, that's not, like, the main thing that they do. The main thing they do is, like, shitpost and, like, talk about how they want to kill themselves and, you know, discover weird and strange fetishes that they never knew that they had. That, I can completely see the idea of having a superhero whose superpower is that they have access to the internet all of the time. In fact, that's already been done before. In the 90s, it was called Freakazoid. And one of the things that Freakazoid, as a show, very correctly predicted is that if you take a human person and just, like, hook them up to all the power of the internet, what it turns them into is a freaky shitposting weirdo who just screams out one-liners and non sequiturs all the time and basically annoys their enemies to death. Like, that's in the 90s, they understood that that's probably what a person embodying the internet is ultimately going to turn out to be. So here, it's like, he can see augmented reality and real-time maps. Yeah, but if you have a smartphone, you can also do that. You can also Google any fact if you just have a smartphone. The trouble here is that, like, the concept here is we take something that exists in reality and then we amp it up to 11 and turn it into a kind of superpower. This is something that you can do. Anime has a specialty in doing that. Lots of anime characters have superpowers that are, like, hyper-specific and only work under very specific circumstances, and then they find interesting ways to put that into practice. But he has superpowers that are, like, a slightly faster version of just having a smartphone with, like, a 4G connection. So this is not doing a great job of pitching to me what is it that makes him a superhero, and it's also not doing a great job of convincing me that the person who's writing this understands what the internet means to young people these days. And one of the reasons why is probably that the writer is, what's his name? Dan Kibblesmith? Kibblesmith someone. Let's see, Emmy-nominated something. Yeah, Daniel Kibblesmith, who's a writer on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and I don't know his exact age, but looking at him in videos, he doesn't look, like, under 35? And if the whole point of having these new warriors is to have, like, a group of heroes who are created from the ideas and sensibilities of, like, people who are kids on the internet or who grew up as kids on the internet, like in the 2000s or the 2010s, maybe you should hire someone who's, like, who was that? Who was a kid on the internet in the 2010s? Okay, right, okay, so there's definitely an experimental internet gas idea here that doesn't feel well developed at this point. Which leads us on to Snowflake and Safespace. Oh boy. Oh boy. And of course they have blue hair and pink hair. Of course they do. Yeah, because... okay. Alright. So, Snowflake. Looks like they have ice powers, for which teal and light blues are definitely an appropriate color scheme. They're dressed sort of like a slightly futuristic version of, like, a roller derby outfit, kinda? Again, this doesn't look like streetwear that anyone puts on, if that was the idea of the character design, but I suppose it looks like a superhero costume for a modern character. Okay. Right. We're gonna have to deal with the names eventually, but right now I don't want to. So Safespace, on the other hand, I mean, going by the name, I'd say they probably have powers that are related to defense, maybe healing, something along those lines, at which point pink and, like, reddish colors, sure. That kind of falls into that aesthetic space. I guess they're siblings? of some kind. Okay, let's read their bio. Psychic twins. All twins are psychic, but we're psychic. Okay. Snowflake, a cryokinetic, can materialize snowflake shuriken projectiles for throwing. Okay, that's... So they're not ice, they're just snowflake shaped? Okay. Safespace can materialize pink force fields. Okay, well, got that right. But he can't inhabit them himself. The reflex only works if he's protecting others. Okay, that's actually an interesting power idea. Like, that creates an interesting dilemma for the hero. Like, and that's a good power for a superhero to have, like a power to protect others, but never to empower themselves. Like, that's fundamentally a selfless power, which is a really good thing for a superhero to have, because superheroes, especially Marvel superheroes, often have to struggle with the conflict between selfishness and selflessness. Spider-Man more than most of them. And that's part of what makes a lot of good storytelling in Marvel comics, is to have a character who has to struggle between doing what's right and doing what it is that they actually want to do, like between the selfish impulse. So that's, okay, cool idea for a power. They are hyper-aware of modern culture and optics, unlike the writer on this thing. And they see their superheroics as a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying. They're probably streaming this. How do you do, fellow kids? Jesus Christ. Okay. So... you... Okay, right, so let's take this seriously. Let's try and take this seriously as it's stated. They see their superheroics as a post-ironic... Do you know what post-ironic means? Meditation... Okay, on using violence to combat bullying. So what seems to be implied here is that they are aware of the inherent storytelling contradiction between, like, superheroes being like, violence against the weak is wrong, but superheroes also being more powerful than everybody else and using violence to enforce their ideals. Okay, that's a decent hook for a story, like to have a superhero who genuinely struggles with the conflict between, like, being someone who employs violence as a vigilante in order to uphold the social status quo, but also, like, being cognizant of the fact that doing that comes with, like, problems. Okay. A post-ironic meditation. See, because now I'm trying to take it seriously here, but I'm giving this way too much credit because every part of this reads as the writer just, like, vomiting up some buzzwords that are vaguely associated with the kids these days, like the Tumblr kids or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it's a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying, which no one has ever said ever, except as a fucking shitpost. Like, this is a shitpost. Tumblr teens say this shit as shitposts. They're, But the writer didn't appear to know that. That's the kind of thing that people say when they're taking the piss out of high-minded academic meditations on the narrative structures of superhero comics. Okay. It's just the hello fellow kids energy is so strong here. Snowflake and Safespace are the twins, the writer says. Really, are they? And their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these terms get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory. Do they not, do they? They take those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. Safespace is a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock. He can create force fields, but he can only trigger him if he's protecting someone else. Snowflake is non-binary. Okay. And goes by they, them, and has the power to generate individual crystallized snowflake-shaped shurikens. Why not just give them snow powers? Okay, the connotation of the word snowflake in our culture right now is something fragile, using the plural wrong there. And this is a character who's turning it into something sharp. Snowflake is the person who has the more offensive power, and Safespace is the person who has the more defensive power. The idea is that they would mirror each other and complement each other. Okay, that's like basic good character design principles. Like, okay, you have an obvious, like a set of floating opposites, then you create characters out of them, and that generates an interesting dynamic with Snowflake being the person who's more likely to try and do violence against others, and Safespace was more likely to try and protect. It's a dynamic that's been explored, like DC Comics have Hawk and Dove, which sort of fall into that one. But, oh Christ, like, I'm trying so hard to give this the benefit of the doubt for no reason. Like, there's no reason to give this the benefit of the doubt because it's fucking Marvel Comics, a comics book outfit that has always been fundamentally really fucking conservative in its values. So let's talk about the fucking names then. Snowflake is a derogatory. Like, it is. We all know it is, because if you've been on the internet for 5 minutes, you know that that is how it's used. It's used as a derogatory by right-wingers and by left-wingers. Everyone uses Snowflake as a derogatory. So the idea here is that this person is like, no, actually, being a snowflake is something I wear as a badge of honor. Which, yeah, I guess you could reclaim it, but it's not... Yeah. I'm struggling to express how bad an idea of this is, because every single person who reads this sees a non-binary person with, like, blue hair who calls themselves Snowflake. The only way this is going to read to anyone ever is as a mean-spirited parody. Like, it's gonna read as a takedown. You can't say, oh no, we're doing it as empowerment, when everyone who sees this is immediately going to go, oh, they're making fun of them. Like, they're not supposed to be taken seriously. This is a stupid parody of these stupid teens with their stupid words and their stupid ideas. Ha, non-binary, fake pronouns. That's what everyone is going to get from this. Everyone who sees it is going to read it as that, which is part of the reason why. There's other reasons also. The announcement trailer for this comic got like 27,000 dislikes on YouTube and like 1,000 likes. Because everyone, no matter whether they think snowflakes are stupid, pronouns are fake, or whatever, or whether they're sensible people who understand that gender is more complicated than a binary because they've learned to think beyond a grade school level of understanding of the world, everyone is going to see this either as pandering to the SJW lefties, if idiots on the alt-right, or they're going to see it as like a ridiculous old man's parody idea of what the stupid kids these days get up to in their dumb little internet clubs. There's no one who's going to see this and be like, oh, this is speaking to my sensibilities. This is something that is for me, that understands my life and my existence. Safespace is not a derogatory, thankfully, but it's been used as one. A safe space is a term out of psychology, much like triggered, which is a word in psychology that's basically when someone has some kind of a trauma or some kind of a stimulus that produces an outsized and uncontrollable reaction, that's generally called a trigger. For example, like a soldier returning from war, here's a car backfiring and is immediately thrown into fight or flight mode because his entire adrenal system reacts to any loud sudden sounds as though he's being fired upon. That's a trigger. And that then gets turned into a derogatory. It was like, oh, snowflakes are triggered. By idiots who don't know what the word means, which causes a lot of problems because some people need those words in order to describe their experiences and the needs that they have of other people to help them make it through the day. Safe space is something similar, because a safe space is just that. It's like if you have a trauma or a deep-seated shame or some kind of psychological need that you require to have addressed for you, you can ask for a safe space to exist for you. Like, you can make a safe space for yourself in your home, like, where, like, you will not be exposed to the things that cause negative triggers in yourself. Like, for example, for trans people, that might be being misgendered is a very unpleasant experience for them, so places where they do not get misgendered would be safe spaces for them in that particular context. Or similarly, someone who has recently lost a parent could have a safe space where people just, like, don't bring up parents around them for a while. Maybe don't talk about death around this person. Like, oh, yeah, you know, Billy over there, he just lost his dad, so let's maybe not talk about death, and maybe not talk about fathers just for a bit. Then you're creating a safe space for someone who has a need in the moment. That then gets turned into a derogatory. It's like, oh, snowflakes just want safe spaces everywhere. They don't want to be challenged or have any ideas in their heads because they're stupid. Which is the same story as triggered. So, you can probably make like, use Safespace as an empowering term on a superhero because it is fundamentally a term that's meant to empower people. Like, it's meant to be something positive that gives you strength, and that ties in okay with his superpower of creating a safe space for other people. All right, sure. But Snowflake is like, it's like, oh yeah, this superhero is called Stupid Dumbass, and he's reclaiming it because being a stupid dumbass is good, actually. Like, there isn't a version of the word snowflake that isn't an insult of some kind, because what's implied in it is that you are something fragile that simply cannot exist in any kind of a challenging environment. That's what the word means. And you say, but snowflakes can be sharp instead. Which just, okay, so they're fragile and unpleasant. Like, the thematic associations here just don't work. Oh boy, this is such an old, like, good lord, just get someone under the age of 30 to write it. Jesus Christ. B negative. Okay, this is better. This is like a cool sort of post-ironic 80s vampire kind of kid. That's pretty cool. Obviously vampire. B negative is actually a good name for a vampire hero. This is kind of cool. Let's have a look at the story. A teen living vampire exposed to Michael Morbius's blood as a child in a rogue but life-saving medical procedure. Okay, that's a decent superhero origin. He still ages like a regular kid. But has all the abilities of Morbius. He's also obsessed with all the music and attitude of a classic long past decades like the 90s and aughts. Right, that was a long time ago, wasn't it? That was 20 years ago. God, I'm old. The world is a vampire, and so am I. It was going so well. That's not a good line. That's all I'll say about that. B negative is the goth kid. When he was a baby, he got a rogue life-saving blood transfusion, we assume, from Michael Morbius. That sounds like an interesting story. Morbius is a kind of an interesting character. He's getting a movie with Jared Leto soon, which seems like a bad idea. But Morbius has always been like one of the fun B-movie villains of the Marvel universe, like conceptually taking the idea of the vampire and turning it into more of a science fiction turning into more of a science fiction monster, which is an interesting thought. And now he has a very similar look and very similar vampire powers. B negative ages like a regular person, or does he? And definitely drinks blood, or does he? But designer artist Luciano Vecchio took brilliant inspiration from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon and gave B negative the leech suckers that the animated Morbius had on his palms. Okay. That or does he thing. See, and or does he that's begging the question. He definitely drinks blood. Or does he? Which tells me, no, he doesn't drink blood. Of course he doesn't. Apparently, he obviously doesn't drink blood. Otherwise, you wouldn't be cute, silly staring there like, maybe he drinks blood, maybe he doesn't, who knows? No, he doesn't. He fucking doesn't. And he ages like a regular person, or does he? Well, okay, so clearly he fucking doesn't if you're begging the question. Which, like, I like the idea of this guy being like a teenager who cannot age, like who cannot grow up because he's stuck in one place due to the vampire blood transfusion thing. But of course that wouldn't work if he got a blood transfusion as a baby. He would need to grow up at some point. I do like the character design. Like, this does seem like the kind of sort of scene kid, sort of TikTok hipster, like something that those kids would do. Like the cosplay generation would wear this. Like they design a look like that for themselves. That's actually, yeah. This character design works. Like, he looks like a teen vampire. He looks like he's obsessed with 80s aesthetics. This is solid. This is perfectly fine. The world is a vampire. And like, what the fuck does the world is a vampire mean, kiddo? That would need to be elaborated on substantially before that becomes a cool line to say to anyone ever. Leaving us with Trailblazer, which is, again, character design-wise, not terrible. Like, I don't know what the black, like, this is sort of a Jack Kirby-esque New Gods style aesthetic on the backpack and stuff like that, but that doesn't belong in the Marvel universe, so I don't know. Trailblazer, who is a woman of, like, a plus size, which is nice. Like, any size that isn't tiny and skinny and basic superhero body archetype is all right by me, because good lord, I'm bored by those. Let's see, bright pink, teal, and then yellow. I don't know what the color scheme is supposed to say about her. Like, the character design isn't telling me... I guess the backpack is the magic bit, right? That's the magic power. Is something to do with the backpack. But then what's the rest of the... What's that supposed to say about who she is or what she does? That might become more clear with the backstory. Let's see. A regular kid scooped up into the world of teenage superheroing. Her magic backpack is actually a pocket dimension with seemingly infinite space from which she can pull out random, useful or random objects. It's not always under her control. She claims to get her power from God, but not the God you're thinking of. That's actually really cool. Like, that's a cool superpower. Having a magic backpack that will give you items that you might need or might be useful, but ultimately it's up to her, presumably, to figure out a way to use them that will help her. That's clever because that puts the onus on the character to be inventive and to be smart about what they do with their superpowers. And for a writer, it's also just convenient that you can justify just giving the character exactly what they need at the moment that they need it. Just they pull it out of their ass, literally. Like, and that's kind of... That's clever. That works. That can make for some really tense, interesting storytelling. But then what's that color scheme about? Because it's not like... It doesn't, like, this is a very 90s aesthetic. Like, this is very, like, bright neon colors that clash with each other. And, like, it makes a nice contrast with like, her skin tone, but... What's the aesthetic supposed to be here? I really can't tell. This is very muddled. Like, I suppose it's supposed to bring her into the sort of same aesthetic as the other characters, but boy, howdy, that's not... It's not a very interesting design. Like, I love that there's body type diversity, at least. That's nice. Thank God that someone at Marvel finally figured out that that's a thing that's maybe worth doing. But this is not a communicative character design at all. Like, if her entire power is centered around her backpack, give her more pockets. Like, give her pockets and, like, a belt where she can stash things that she pulls out of her backpack, or like, something to do with bags. Like, there must be something else you can do than just she's wearing pants and a hoodie, but with weird colors. She's a group home and foster kid who's volunteering at a senior center when this mysterious... Okay. When this mysterious threat shows up and Night Thrasher runs to the rescue, the scribe adds... Why would you call the writer the scribe? Okay. And because she helps him, she ends up in the crosshairs of these new outlawed law. Okay, so there's a thing in the Marvel Universe right now where there's a law against being a superhero, vigilante, if you're, like, under the age of something, 18, 21, something like that. Like, it's sort of a superhero regulation where if you're a kid, maybe you shouldn't get to run around with superpowers and be a vigilante. Maybe that's a bad idea. And that's sort of the concept of this team, is that they're kids with superpowers who are not allowed to be vigilantes, so they're going to be mentored by the old new warriors who are going to teach them how to do superheroing properly. Which is a perfectly sensible setup for a story. Like, Young Justice basically used that one. So, okay. That, I guess... But yeah, Trailblazer wants to help people, but she doesn't think of herself as a superhero yet. The Marvel Universe is a reflection of her own. When a new law gets put into place, it affects people in unforeseen ways. I still don't know what the hell she's supposed to be about. Like the rest of them, even when the ideas are absolutely terrible, I can tell what the concept, like, what's the point? Like, this is an internet kid. Okay, he embodies the internet. He's this thing of, like, a kid who's terminally online and who's always got the internet piping directly into their brain because they're always connected. Okay, I can see that you can turn that into a character. You can tell a story about that. Safespace and Snowflake, yeah, it's a, like, extremely weird parody idea of what the Tumblr kids are like these days, except they're not Tumblr kids anymore because Tumblr is dead. TikTok kids, I guess, or whatever. And, like, B negative, he's a vampire kid. Hey, he's got an obsession with, like, 80s aesthetics. Okay, there's a concept there, but what's... She has a backpack where she can pull out anything that she needs to help people. Okay, so she's someone who has the ability to acquire any item anytime she needs it, but that has to be contrasted against something like that's with the great superheroes like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. He has all these amazing superpowers and he can be Spider-Man, but because of that, it costs him in his private life. He cannot maintain his relationships. He cannot maintain, like, his job or his career or have a normal life because the Spider-Man persona gets in the way of that. So you have a magic backpack that can give you anything. She comes from a background of poverty, I guess. Like, she's a group home and foster kid. So she comes from a background of deprivation and poverty, and now she has the ability to provide. Like, is that the power fantasy here? It's like to be able to always give someone else the thing that they need at any given moment? Because that's a cool power fantasy. But is that? This is just unclear. Like, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's just very muddy. And I guess that gets expanded on the actual story, but yeah. So I think we can safely say that it's Snowflake and Safespace that has provoked most of the backlash here, because all of the people who have been insulted their entire lives by being called snowflakes for stuff like wanting to be called the name or gender that they actually are not going to be happy to see that misery being appropriated into actually being called a snowflake is a good thing. Like, no one wants to fucking hear that. No one wants to see that. That doesn't feel like empowerment to anyone, if that was the point. And Safespace, very much the same thing. The people who have, like, who genuinely have a need of safe spaces are not going to be like, yeah, something that reflects my experience from this thing. This guy who, I think it's a male. Are they male? Yeah, he. Like, that doesn't represent anyone's experience. And all of the freaking alt-right grifters and comic book lunatics, and god damn it, I saw a lot of them in the response videos to the announcement for this thing, are gonna be like, oh, Marvel are catering to the SJWs. Like, they're not gonna like it either. Who the hell is this for? It seems to be for absolutely no one. And I just... Experimental internet gas. Freakazoid at least had the thing where he accidentally inputs a code to a chip that then overloads and saps him into the... Like, at least it had some kind of tech explanation. What the fuck is internet gas? Actually, don't answer that. It's probably something weird and sexual that I don't want to know about. And he's, like... Screen time is probably the worst of these, just in terms of the conception, because his superpowers are exactly the same as anyone who owns a smartphone, and there doesn't seem to be any appreciation of the themes and ideas that come from someone being always online. Like, for example, if he's always online, maybe his power could be that he instantly knows and understands and reads all the social media history of any person that he meets, and is therefore immediately exposed to the backlash of all of their thoughts and opinions and feelings and all of their bad hot takes and their terrible selfies and their depression tweets and their thirst traps and their DMs. And that shit puts a great big strain on his mind, which is something that teenagers these days are actually experiencing, that being always online and connected is really fucking stressful. That there's so much information and it's hard to filter it, that it causes, like, it can cause people to get really depressed or incredibly overstimulated. That's real stuff that's actually happening. But no, augmented reality, and he can Google things and look at Google Maps anytime he wants, I guess. Like, this is probably the weakest of the characters, because there's just no concept of the writer knowing what the fuck they're talking about in this announcement of the thing. This one is the one that provokes most outrage, because it seems like a thing that is deliberately designed to provoke outrage from absolutely everyone. I don't understand how they looked at that and thought, yes, this is a great idea. Nobody's gonna yell at us because of this. No, everyone's gonna yell at you because what the fuck are you doing? What did you think was gonna happen? B negative is cool. I like B negative. That's a cool concept. That's a cool character. Michael Morbius, but he's younger. He's a teenager. That means more emotions to throw around rather than... Like, Michael Morbius has always been kind of a emo, broody asshole. Like, that's always kind of been his thing. He's like, oh, I'm so sad, I'm a monster, blah, blah. Like, he's always been a little bit that, which is, like, fine. But, okay, a teenager, it's a little bit more justifiable to have someone who's, like, a moody, introverted, like, angry, self-pitying vampire character if they're a teenager, because that's kind of what being a teenager is like. 80s aesthetic on the character design. He looks a little bit like an 80s superhero in some ways. That's, yeah, sure. That works for me. And Trailblazer is, like, conceptually very interesting, but the design is, I don't know what it is. What is this supposed to be? Is this her streetwear? Is like, because again, the idea is she's a regular kid scooped up into a world of teenage superheroing. Okay, so why not just have her wear, like, regular clothes? Like, just, like, actual human clothes that a person would wear instead of this weird-ass superhero costume? What is this? Is this supposed to be tech? Is it supposed to be fashion? What is it? I don't know. This is just unfocused. But, oh boy, yeah, God. Marvel, just hire someone under the age of 45, would you? Like, if you're gonna do this, hire someone who isn't, like, a writer on the fucking Colbert Late Show. I don't understand why anyone thought that this was a good idea, but there you go. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this with video of me being baffled at Marvel's incompetence, then I guess hit the like, comment, and subscribe buttons if you want to, or not. Like, I don't like advertising myself too much on negative videos like this one, so like, you can click the buttons if you want. I have a Patreon, I have a merchandise store, I have a tip jar. Consider supporting content creators, generally speaking, directly when you can, because especially in these times when ad rates are going to be plummeting because the stock market is taking a dive and advertisers are pulling their advertising, online content creators depend on direct help more than ever. Please remember to wash your hands, and thank you very much for watching.